live around the world, this is Paper Cuts with Brad and Jay.
We'll just get this out of the way here. Thanks for joining us on Brad's show.
Yeah, thanks for coming to my show. I did not say shenanigans. Okay.
Are you drinking already?
No, I've just got water. Always looking smooth, aren't you?
Yeah, I do it. I try to clean up for the show. Look, one of us has to. Come on.
Joining us tonight from Weirdpunk Books, welcome, Sam Richard. We are live.
Yes, we are. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Paper Cuts. My name is Jay. That's Brad. Enough about us. Brad, it feels so good. I have power.
Yay, Jay.
I was all over Twitter, complaining about no power this week. So I mean, this feels good. I had to pay somebody off to make sure we had power for this show.
I mean, the show's that important.
It is that important. Yeah. So with us tonight, friend of the show. This dude was guest number 2 way back in season 1. It seems like forever ago. It was like about a year ago that we were talking off the air, right? A year ago tomorrow. Season 1. This dude was guest number 2. So he's back for more. He's the owner of Weirdpunk Books. He also writes his own shit every now and then. Everyone give it up for Sam Richard.
What's going on, Sam?
Thank you so much for having me. How y'all doing?
Big serious question for you, just to start this off, to start the mood, okay? Get serious for a second.
Yeah.
Last year, when I convinced you to be on the show, did you think we would gain the steam and popularity that we did and still be doing this a year later? Or were you thinking we just throw us a bone and never hear from us again?
Well, so I figured you would still be around, but I thought that only one of you would be alive. I figured at some point you'd fight to the death. And not even because you were mad at each other, but just for an episode. So I thought it'd be more of a one-on-one thing this time. But I'm glad I both here.
I do have a little bit of a history of shutting shows down, but that's a whole different.
That could be our 100th episode, Jay, like Celebrity Deathmatch, fight to the death. But another serious question, Sam. What kind of blackmail does Jay hold over you for you to actually come back on this show?
I mean, I can't even begin to talk about it because even talking about it will get me into trouble.
Get you in trouble. That's the money he used to pay off the people to get his power back. That blackmail money.
Gotta get that money to grease the wheels somewhere.
We'll go back to revisit that episode. We're talking about payola. Yeah. So, yeah, it's been a year. I mean, I know we talk on Twitter, back and forth and Instagram and do all that stuff. But I mean, it's been a year packed full of goodies, it seems like, for Weirdpunk. And I feel like you've done so many things. Like when you did that episode, you had done so many things leading up to that episode. And we were talking about just everything. And it seems like since that year, you've doubled everything. So, I mean, I want to talk about everything, but I know I saw you around a few other YouTube channels in the past 6 months or so. I'd like to think that maybe reopened the door for you on that and got you in that mode to do some shows. But yeah, I've seen you doing your rounds.
You were definitely the person that introduced me to the fine people at YouTube to get me on every other
Exactly.
channel.
It's like a high class. We ever peeking stuff when we're drinking. Yeah.
It could have only gone up after our episode. He started at the bottom and worked his way up.
Yeah. That's what you do, right? Yeah.
I mean, we provided a shovel for you to get yourself out of the ground and keep going. So
you gotta play the basement punk shows before you can play the venues,
Yeah.
So what else has been going on with Weirdpunk in the last year?
That's a loaded question, really.
Yeah,
just bullet point, just lay it all out for us.
Every single thing. It's it's funny because there was a lot of movement last year, like even up to when we talked last on your show, but then like the rest of that year, some stuff happened, and then I literally haven't done anything since. Like the last book that came out in 2021 was the repress of To Wallow in Ash and Other Sorrows.
Right.
And that's the last book Weirdpunk has put out.
Right. And that was the last of last year's sub club, right?
Yeah, that was the 6th book for the year last year.
Right.
And I'm slated for 5 this year, and I'm getting the first 2 together right now. So it's just been kind of, I know it's kind of going around, right, with everything that's going on in the world.
Right.
With there's the supply chain issues, and there's just general feelings of instability, and the coming climate crisis that we're already living through, and the coronavirus is still a thing that exists and is making it hard to exist, and all of that stuff, all of that pressure has made it really hard for me. And not just me. I'm not alone in this, but I see a lot of people talking about, right? It's hard to get stuff done. It's hard to have any kind of focus. It's hard to take the time to do the work, especially stuff that's not like the things you have to be doing to live. And that's been a big struggle for me this first half of the year. And part of it is like in fall of last year, my dog died, Nero, and he and I were like, I'd raised him from a puppy. There's all these connections with my late wife with him. Like we raised him together. So he was one more connection to her. So it was like grieving his loss, but then also grieving her by proxy of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's all of that. And I was just, by the end of the fucking year, I was just exhausted. And this year it's been super slow going to try to get anything done. Cause it just feels like, some of the time it's like, is this worth it? And I know it is. It very clearly is, but sometimes it's just hard to get out of bed and do the stuff.
Well, I mean, with that said, looking at the past couple of years, though, you doing this publishing yourself, it's been pretty productive. I mean, the year before that, you had 4 or 5 books released. Last year, 6. I mean, you don't see that many released by some of these bigger publishing companies, and here you are doing it yourself. So I mean, it is a high production that you're putting out for. So yeah, you can give yourself a little you're allowed to give yourself a little break, and pace yourself. But I mean,
thank you.
I'm not. So what's that, like 11 or 12 books in the last 2 years? So that's a lot, really, in the indie world, because I can't think of another, several publishers that could do that many and be successful with them. Because that's the other thing. I mean, I think pretty much all of yours have been hits. So
I hope so. They've done okay. It's it's a thing. When I went to the Scares That Care Author Con in Williamsburg, Virginia. Was that this spring or whatever?
It was April or something, I think.
Yeah, and that was an amazing time. But I was on the publisher panel for that, and there were like 14 of us or 12 of us, like publishers, all on this panel. It was a really good crowd, lots of good questions. But I was talking with Christoph, who like co-runs Clash, and he and Lisa.
I love Clash, by the way.
Yeah, Clash are amazing, and they're very good friends, and they've been really helpful for me, especially when I was first getting started. But he was telling me, he was like, "It's really hard to do this alone." He's like, think of like all of the publishers that or most of the publishers that are at least 2 people, if not 3, and at the time, like, because he and Lisa just like had their first kid, so he's like, I've kind of been doing it alone for a little while Lisa tends to, she just gave birth and all that. He's like, I've been kind of doing a one-man show myself, and it is exhausting. It's burnout city. And I was like, he was like, you have to find someone to help you. You have to relinquish some of that control. And I still don't know if I'm there yet. It was really nice to hear that, like, oh wait, like I'm doing. And they put out a ton of books. They put out.
Look at this, though. I mean, look at the stack. This is
a lot. That's a lot of books.
Yeah, for one person to really get this out and about. I mean,
and that's not even including all the ones you read that you didn't either accept or all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
too.
Right,
exactly. Yeah, but it's just like it's a lot of work, which is great. I mean, I'm here for it. It's just sometimes it's hard, especially because I don't have somebody over me going like, get that done.
Right.
It's just me. It's just like me deciding like, fuck, I have all this shit to do. So sometimes it piles up and it piles up and it piles up, and I'm way behind on stuff. And I am right now, but I'm trying to right the ship and get back into the real world of publishing.
But I know you've been kind of advertising or talking about the first book for the Sub Club, the anthology that's close to coming out. You had a little help editing that, right?
Yeah.
Joe helped you out with that one.
Yeah.
So you got a little help with that one, at least,
Yeah, that was nice because traditionally, like Weirdpunk, the first 3 anthologies, or first 2, and then the 4th anthology. Sorry, the 3rd one I did alone, but 3 of the first 4 anthologies were co-edited, right? First with Emma Alice Johnson, and then with Brendan Vidito. And I was pretty sure, so I've done the couple smaller anthologies, the ones that I've just invited some friends, Cinema Viscera, Beautiful Grotesque. But I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to do a big submission open call again, just because it's so much work. You have to read. I mean, for the New Flesh, the Cronenberg anthology that Brendan and I co-edited, we got like, I think it was 200 submissions or something. Which I know there are books out there, anthologies, that were getting like 6 and 8 and 1,000, but even 2 was like, it's like as long as the Bible, and you're having to read them really fast.
But that was also like, it's in some of the earlier days of Weirdpunk, right? I mean, you didn't have the popularity you have now, so to get that, a few years ago, to get 200, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, it was really cool, but it's so much work. It's really exhausting. God bless the people who just crank out anthologies, because we were doing one a year before I decided I wasn't going to do anymore. And it was exhausting. I mean, it was really fun, but it's so much work, and it just feels like a lot of pressure. I always want to give the stories their due. Like, you don't read like 100 in a day. You have to each story with the respect that the writer spent all this time. The writer is submitting, so you got to treat the story with respect. So it's like limiting it to like 8 to 10 a day, just to make sure you're not burnt out just staring at words that won't penetrate your brain. So I was like, I think I'm good. I don't think I'm ever going to do this again. And then Joe Koch was like, I have this idea, and I was like, let's talk about it. And it ended up, I don't know, like, he's become a very close friend anyhow, and obviously worked with him with putting out The Wingspan of Severed Hands. And what a fantastic person. And the idea of horror stories involving the relationship between artists and models, or artists and subjects, was just too intriguing for me to walk away from. I was like, well, it's Weirdpunk, so if it's an anthology, I'm one of the editors. It's just how I do it. I can't. Again, there's a control thing where I can't be like, oh, you're gonna do a book and I'll just publish it. I'm like, no, it's like, it's my money. I have to
have your fingers in there.
Yeah, I have to be in there in it. And so we worked on that, throughout the fall and the winter, and it's pretty much done. There's a couple things I'm dragging my feet on, but we have all the stories. They're edited. I am finishing the layout like right now, actually. Like, that's what I've been doing the past couple days. So that should be out in July. But that was like a really interesting return to the roots of Weirdpunk in a way.
Yeah. I mean, the subject sounded, the definite Weirdpunk subject, really.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's just been so cool to work with him on it and not have to carry everything, because there were times when he definitely went above and beyond in doing some of the work on it that I just simply didn't have at the time any time for. And it was just like a fucking awesome person and an awesome project. So I'm really excited for people to be able to read that. We're still getting cover art nailed down, but Ira Rat is doing it, but it's going to be great.
Ira Rat. Oh, I got a story for that. So what's that, 11, 12 stories? And
it's going to be 13.
13. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it's like Gwendolyn Kist and Haley Piper. We got Gary J. Shipley, Danye Coles, Ira Rat is in it too. There's a whole, I'm obviously forgetting some people, we have a whole grip of really great stories by really talented writers.
You've got a story there too, right?
Yep.
Is that a new story for you, or is that a reprint from something else?
Yeah, I don't do Weirdpunk anthologies will never have any reprints in them ever. It's always original pieces. Yeah.
What's your story about?
It's a really weird one to talk about because it sounds really funny, but then it's also not very funny. I wrote a story that's title is Jizz Christ. And for people who are interested and know about art out there might see the tie to, there's a paint or a photo from the 80s called Piss Christ, where an artist took a photo, or took a big crucifix and put it in a big jar of piss and took a picture of it. And it's an infamous, like, it caused all of these, it's like censorship in other countries because
is there an NFT for that? I'm kidding.
Yeah, the NFT now.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting photo because his point wasn't, the artist is actually Catholic, and his point wasn't to be blasphemous. He was saying that if Christ was a living, breathing human being on earth, then he had body fluids, and he, at the time of his death, very likely pissed. And to say that that is somehow blasphemous when it's the reality is actually like a really fucked up thing, to not accept the whole of a person and the whole of Christ. And I'm not a Christian at all. Big surprise for people who know me.
Shocker.
But I was really taken by, I've always been really fascinated by that photo, especially because there was such a visceral reaction to it by a lot of religious people who didn't understand it or didn't want to understand it or felt attacked by it for whatever reason. And it just became kind of infamous. And so I had the idea, this is like a story that without this art aspect, I've tried to write like 5 or 6 times since I was 18, like in about 2000. I have written and rewritten and tried other takes on trying to write a story about people with body fluids that are acidic or corrosive, and specifically about 2 people meeting where like it's like this is not normal in this world, but it's like kind of a nihilistic romance story of 2 people who find each other, who both have this same secret condition, where their spit, their piss, their sexual fluids, their mucus is acidic. And so what that would look like in the scope of their lives, with like, you can't fucking kiss somebody because they break out in boils or, you know, like chemical burns basically, and how
Sam, come on, where's the
it reminds me of this is like reminds me of Rogue from X-Men. She can't touch him, like, she burns him or whatever.
Yeah, I've had a couple people say like, oh, it's kind of like that, right? Like the think about the isolation of that character who can't, she touches someone, she hurts them. How do you be close to someone? How alienating that would be? So I had that idea, and I combined it. I was thinking of Piss Christ, and I was like, oh, this guy's semen is so it's about this art piece that he makes, which is similar to Piss Christ, but it's like a vial full of acidic cum with a crucifix that's slowly degrading. And the degradation of the crucifix is the like storytelling tool, like how I show the movement of time is like it keeps getting more corroded until it's almost nothing. And these 2 people finding each other because of this piece of art. And again, like the title of it sounds funny,
but it's not.
But it's really not. It's like the whole thing is riding on like the emotion, and
there's some sort of hidden meaning at the end of it. And you're like, oh man. You're like, you read it, you're cringing the whole time. And you're like, oh, it just takes it out of you.
So that's my story. I'll leave it at that. But it's really, again, I feel so weird even telling people about it because they laugh, and then I tell them more, and they're like, "Oh, okay."
It's more of like a nervous laugh, just going along with you. You know? And this is just the beginning, because next year you're going to probably redo Everybody Poops, a horror story, you know, and go with that. So
but I'll figure out a way for it to ride on pure emotion.
Yeah. Mix art in with Everybody Poops.
Yeah.
Coming in 2023.
And the anthology is called Stories of the Eye, right?
Yeah. That's a Georges Bataille reference.
Actually, I reread that this past a couple months ago, because I last time I read it was college, I want to say, and I had to revisit it just to see if I remembered everything. And I remembered everything.
What did you think on reread?
I probably got it more now because I'm almost 45. So like at college, I'm like, what the fuck's going on with this egg? And did they have STDs back then? You know, I'm just like, but now I'm reading, I'm like, okay, I see more of the art in it, you know.
Yeah.
Back in college, just like, hey, look what I'm reading here. It was in the library. Look at it. So yeah.
I like unabashedly love that book. It's a favorite for sure. It is very strange.
I mean, it's just so out there, and then you have to kind of laugh at it because it's that nervous laughter because you're like, okay, would this actually happen? And are there people that's doing this? And it's just yeah. Yeah, we could probably talk about that for another hour and a half. It's a short book too.
Yeah, it's a short book. Yeah, that's a really fun one to introduce people to for sure.
You haven't read it, Brad, have you?
I haven't read it now.
Oh,
case in point, you should read it.
I'll check it out
after the show. Check it out.
I like my kind of elevator pitch on that. Anytime I tell people about it, because I've made a ton of my friends read that. It's essentially the story of a couple of like sociopathic teenagers in France in the like 30s or whenever it is, 40s.
Yeah.
And it's like all of these really fucked up sexual exploits that they take part in, combined with an insane amount of really surreal, vivid symbolism. So there's all of this stuff to like read into it. There's kind of themes of spherical objects, all sort of representing the sun. And it is a wild, weird read. It's really cool though.
See,
what's the author's name?
Georges Bataille.
Yeah. Okay. Amazon's got it really cheap, like the Kindle version, like $2 or $3 right now. But that's what was weird when you made the announcement for this anthology and it was named that, and I immediately was thinking of that book. I'm like, wow, like he really did just go extreme all of a sudden. Before I read the description of what you were looking for, like I was like, oh shoot, like you got to be like 21 probably to buy this now. You know, I'm like, what did you just do? You're gonna restrict your audience a little bit. Yeah, I mean it's it's pretty out there. So
all props go to Joe on that. He came up with the name and came up with the whole concept. We were like, we talked concept first, and then we were like, okay, what about name? And he came up with that, and I was like, that's brilliant because it works out. And it's obviously it's not a tribute to Bataille in any way, but he and I are both big fans, and my art, like my writing, is perpetually influenced by him.
That's why I reread the book. I mean, I hadn't even thought of it until you made the announcement and it was named that, and I was like, I got to go revisit this book. So.
Yeah, it was like we were hoping that people would like get that reference, but also not necessarily think like this is a tribute or something. It would also like on the other level make sense because the whole book is stories about it's like it's not vision, but the relationship between art or artists and their subjects, their models. So it's all about that, like seeing and intuiting, and so we just like this is a great fucking title. Let's just do that. And if it's confusing to some people, I guess it's confusing to some.
Well, because you're going to get the crowd thinking that it is a tribute, or some kind of dedication or so. So you might get that kind of carryover crowd, and then we'll see what the reaction is when it's unless there's a story in it that involves an egg, then we'll have to find out.
Maybe I'll revise and throw some egg stuff into Jizz Christ.
just maybe some artwork of an egg and not even say anything to anybody about what it represents or anything, and just have it on a few pages.
That's a good idea.
Get Max Booth to get an egg story for you. He likes eggs.
There we go. Yeah, we'll ask Max.
Did you get a bunch of submissions for that one?
Yeah, we got almost 200 on that as well. It was just shy. It was like 193 or something. So it was a boatload to sift through, but there were so many really good stories. That's the bummer, right? Because I was like, we had a kind of, how I do it is I have a word limit for the full book, and so it's like, here's the word limit of stories we can accept, and then the total word limit that includes Joe and my story, and it's really just budget. It's like, how much can I spend on stories for this? So instead of setting like it's 10 stories. It was like the stories are between 3,000 and 5,000 words, I think is what our limit was. And so that's going to be a variant in there. So we're going to be able to fit as many stories that hits like the 40,000 word mark with that. And it ended up, and then 50, including Joe and mine. So then it ended up being, we picked 11 and then we each have our story. So 13 total.
So with there being like a max word limit for the book, did you like, oh, I really enjoy these 2 shorter ones, but then there's this longer one that maybe I don't like as much. I'm gonna do the 2 shorter ones, maybe over top of that one, so you can fit an extra story in there.
It's
sort of play that math juggling game.
You did math. You had to do
every
math.
time. Every time I've done one of these, especially with someone else, right, which has been the majority of them, there's that, because you both pick, like how I've always done it is make a tiered list of like, here are my absolute must-haves. Here are stories that I love. Here are stories I really like. Here are stories that were okay. Here are stories that I didn't like. And here are stories that are like absolutely not. And like, didn't fit the theme, or I just, for whatever reason, like really don't work for the book. And then it's a whole game that you have to play with the other person where you're comparing lists. And every time I've done this with someone else, there's been like the stories I gotta have are like the same, or maybe one from there is in the I love it, category. But like I think it was 7 that we matched on that top from, and then it's talking out the other ones and like looking at the next tier down, and then looking at comparing, like there might be a story in somebody's really high tier that's in a low tier because there was something about it that the other person just didn't like, or it just didn't work for them. So you're kind of it's this weird negotiation that's really fascinating. But that is a consideration as you go, like we're at the point kind of at the end where it's like we can take this one longer one that we both really like, or we can take these 2 shorter ones that we also both really like. And that's a choice you have to make. And that's a choice. And some of it comes down to, like a lot of it comes down to the vibes of the stories and how they flow together with what you already have. When you're at that point, you're going like, well, we already have a story that feels in a similar way to this one, that has similar themes or has similar even just details. So it's a vetting process in a lot of different ways, and that
you don't want 5 stories that kind of feel the same.
Exactly. Or like hit the same types of ideas, or have the same type of, even like with this, because it's art, it was like we don't want too many stories. We don't want a book full of stories just about painters, right? We want
models or whatever.
Like we wanted to cover a lot of different varieties of art, because art is so expansive that it just made sense to like try to, and we certainly can't hit all of them, but but at least have certainly some stories about artists in there, but they're like painters, but then also stories about like fashion designer, and a story about like a weird video, like film thing, and story. So just like story about it straight up about a director, like just making sure that we're covering our ground in terms of, and it's obviously the stories of the quality you want them to be, when you're doing that too, but it's also, you're looking at it in layers, or like almost as though it's a multi-dimensional object. Like how does this click together with this other one and this other one?
So you got close to 200 submissions, and you both read all of them.
So
right? Because I know some other anthology calls, like they split them up and then they bring them together, not reading all. I know some that don't read them all, like that's why they have a team to figure out, but you both read them all.
Every other
close to them. So.
Every other Weirdpunk book anthology with someone else, we've both read them all. This was the one Joe did some heavy lifting for me and read some of them. He read kind of before me, because I was in the middle of a couple things, so I didn't have time to dedicate to reading them all super fast. And it was kind of in between projects for him. So he read a bunch of them, if not all of them, before I'd even gotten to them. And because I was on kind of time constraints, he ended up cutting I think it was 50 off the bottom or something. Okay. He cut some of them for me that were like the ones that clearly didn't just like fit the theme.
Right.
For whatever reason. And I left that in his, capable hands to do. And I did feel weird about it because I've always been really adamant about all editors read everything, but I was just against the wall on time and couldn't make it work. And so he offered to do that for me, which was really cool. And I did feel really weird about, but eventually I was like, well, we'll just have to do this and it'll be fine. And I think he tried to not be super super quick draw on it. It was just really the ones that didn't work for whatever reason with the book, or what we were, because we had talked about really what we were looking for.
Yeah.
And that's not to say they weren't good stories. I'm sure a lot of them were fantastic, but
maybe some interpreted the theme wrong.
You get that a lot. You get definitely right. Like as writers, you can read submission guidelines and adhere to them, but never quite know really. There are like words that don't exist inside submission guidelines.
Yeah.
Right. That you're like different things that people are actually looking for that you
got to have the little orphan Annie decode it from the Christmas story to figure out what the actual thing is going to be. So
it's like you try to be really descriptive about what you're looking for, but sometimes people either misinterpret it or obviously again, like writers, I've edited so many books, like you get people who just either didn't read the submission guidelines at all or read and completely misunderstood them. Yeah. Especially, not always, but a lot of the first handful of submissions you'll get for a submission call are people's a trunk story that they're just like, well, this might work. This has
just throwing it out there.
So you always get a group of that, and I think that's kind of what Joe had cut from the pool for me.
Because there are people who have several different kinds of short stories ready to go, just waiting for those calls. I got one. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I don't tend to do that myself as a writer, and that's not a slam on people who do that. People sometimes they have a story that's perfect, right? That's absolutely perfect for a submission call, and they get picked. That story gets slotted. But I'm always like, when I see the call, I try to, if I want to write for something, I'm starting from the ground up and building it.
So with all these anthologies you've done with, edited with other people, have you ever had a story where either you absolutely didn't like it and the other person loved it, or vice versa, and y'all sort of fought over it? Like, what was the resolution of that? Where you like it or the other person hates
arm
it, or
wrestle,
the other way around?
Okay.
Yeah. Do you Rochambeau for it, or how does that go?
That did happen on an early Weirdpunk book with Emma when she and I were co-editing, and when she ran Weirdpunk. There was a story that for one of the books that I really liked, and I really liked it because it had this very technicolor, frenetic energy to it that I didn't really see in any of the other stories. And this is and it was her first time editing a story or editing an anthology too. This is my first time editing an anthology. So you're going in like, I don't know how we do this, so we'll just figure it out. And so I'm maybe not looking as much for quality. I'm looking for stuff that just feels right at that time. And so I had this story that was in my I think top or second to the top tier that I really liked because this kind of one aspect of it when the rest of it didn't really work. And we ended up talking through it, and it became a thing where it was a length thing with a story that she really liked that I didn't really like. And then I was like, but if we don't take that, we can take this other story you really like and this story I really like. And then it's kind of win-win. And we hemmed and
both get a story.
Hemmed and hawed and talked it over, and we ended up picking the two instead of the one. And then years later, another somebody who I know who reviewed it said that there was one story that didn't work for them in that book. And I private ask them about it. Just curious, like no judgment. I'm just really curious. And it was that fucking story. So I was wrong. And like looking back in hindsight, I was totally wrong. But you know, you learn as you go, right? So
So the moral of the story is, if you're co-editing with somebody else, they're always right and you're wrong.
Yeah.
That's how it's going to go from now on. If you disagree, just go with the other person.
Yeah. And that's, you know, and a little bit of that did happen with Joe on this one. And it came down to the kind of 2 or 1, because it was, you know, there were 2 that I really, really liked that he also liked, but then there was one that he really liked that I also liked, but like they were just kind of like flipped the level of, but we talked about it more. We talked about kind of the other stories and how they would interplay with the other stories and some of the other aspects, and we ended up making our decision. But so, you know, it is every new person I've done this with it's been a different experience, which is really cool. And so I always kind of go into it being like, this is a new experience. I've done this, but I've never done this with you.
Right.
So we'll have to figure out how we communicate. We'll have to figure out how we will make these choices together, because I want us both to be happy. I'm not like I'm publishing it, so it's like, no, this is a partnership. This is a collaboration, and let's discuss things if they're, you know, whatever issues with stories or whatnot are going on. Like, let's try to figure it out and come to a workable conclusion for both of us. And
Now with doing these anthologies and you know, going back and forth with whoever you're editing it with, do you ever have, I don't know if this ever happens or not, did it ever occur to you to, okay, what would make this story you both agree on it? Do you ever go back to the writer and say, if you want to just make the small change, the odds are we're going to take it and go with it? I mean, does it ever go that far with an anthology? Because they're short stories. I mean, they're pretty much right there for you. And it's not like editing like an actual longer novel, but you know, if they tweaked a little bit here or there, have a better chance.
Yeah, I similar to that, but not exactly that. I will say that every story that I've ever accepted for an anthology is contingent on edits.
Okay.
So sometimes there are more edits than others, and it's like you're, you know, generally saying like, and I don't know if we expressly said this with this anthology, but I've generally been like, you know, it's accepted contingent on edits. Generally, my edits are more suggestions, but sometimes it's like, this needs to be fixed or reworked. And I haven't had to do that in a while. That was more earlier books when the submission pool was smaller, right? Because the first Weirdpunk release got 35 submissions. The second was 65. The third, Zombie Punks Fuck Off, was around 100, I think, 80 to 100. So it was smaller pools of work. And I think specifically with Zombie Punks Fuck Off, and I've said this before, so I don't think she'll mind me saying it, but Jo Quinnell's story in that was her first published piece, and like I didn't know her at that time. We became friends through that process.
Right.
Now she's one of my best friends, and I've worked with her on the Mud Ballad, and we're putting out a collection together because she's amazing and she's an amazing writer. But that story in particular, I was pretty like, this is contingent on edits because there's some things in this story that just don't quite work for me. And it was less moving parts of the story and more a prose thing. She was doing a super staccato James Ellroy kind of thing in that story, which is a style that I do like, but you know, even James Ellroy has taken that style too far. So we, you know, and she was totally cool about reworking it, and we reworked it, and I still love that story. But that was one of those times where it was like, this more than some of the others is going to need some heavier lifting, not like crazy pull it apart, but some heavier lifting, and I'm accepting it with you knowing that changes will be made to it. And
so you kind of saw through the weeds and saw the actual main part of it and wanted that main part in it, and just decided to, you know, do a little trimming and fix things up with it.
Yep, so. For sure. And that just like sometimes happens with a story where like there's this aspect that doesn't quite work, but if we fix it, or they fix it, if we figure out a way to fix it for them to make it more workable, this will be perfect. But I find that now having done 2 anthologies with 200 submissions, the pool is just bigger. And just it's more stories, and also, and this isn't a slam on those early books, because we had fantastic writers submitting, but there's a wider variety of like really, really fantastic writers submitting to these now, because at least some people know about Weirdpunk, at least some people know the name. So, feeling lucky enough to have like Gary J. Shipley or Haley Piper or Andrew Wilmot, send us a story. And I've always operated in the like, I do not accept a story because of the name attached. I have rejected stories from some bigger names, many of whom are friends, and I felt really bad about it. But if the story's not right, the story's not right. But at the same time, you end up getting stories from writers who tend to fucking bring it like every time. And if they bring it to that one, you're like, well, hell yeah, that's great.
So were you surprised or shocked by some of the ones you received this time?
Whoa, I'm a big fan of them. That's awesome they submitted.
That does happen. That did happen for sure. But we also now it's hard for me to remember who we expressly invited, who was on that kind of tier of like holy shit people. Because we invited, I think 10, and I always invite with the express, like an invitation is not an acceptance.
Right.
And even with this, we rejected several people who we invited. I always end up rejecting people who I invite, not to be an asshole, but just because it's about the book. It's about, like, I love this person, I love their writing, and maybe if I don't know them, but I love their writing. I think they do something really cool. Maybe the really cool thing they did just didn't work.
So you don't invite somebody and they throw you their trunk story and they're like, oh, here, just throw this one in there. And you're like, this doesn't fit at all.
That's a thing that in the new Flesh, we invited a writer who I'm friends with on Facebook and I've always had a really good rapport with. I'm not gonna out them, but
do it, Sam. No, I'm just playing.
A great person. This writer sent us a story, and it was a cool story, but it just didn't work for the book. And I felt really bad being like, hey friend, like, I'm really glad you sent this to us, but it's not gonna land. This isn't quite right, and I kind of explained why. And they were super cool about it, and they were also like, yeah, that makes sense. I was running out of time. And I grabbed a story I had in my trunk, and I like reworked it to fit the theme. And I'm like, I mean, good on you. You got something in, but it's not gonna make.
That's cool. They were cool about it, though. They were.
Yeah, I've never had anybody who I've invited be an asshole when their story is rejected. But I also I front load it, being like me requesting a story from you is not an acceptance. Like it's got. Like
so you're not blindsiding them. Like you invited me, but you didn't take it. What's up with that?
Yeah, exactly. It's more like we'd just love to see a piece from you in our inbox.
Yeah.
Yeah. With you're talking about content editing a minute ago. Do you content edit stories very often for the anthologies? Or is it mostly just grammar and punctuation and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, more the kind of copy edits, some occasional content. So copy editing, I'm also I love prose. So when I copy edit, I'm looking a lot at how not just like the sentence works or how well it works. I'm looking at how sentences interplay with each other in a paragraph, or how paragraphs interplay with each other, just on a purely like prose level. And it's a thing I never want to overstep and be like, this is how I would do it. But there's kind of key things I look for, like not intentionally having repetition, especially like, because I like repetition in bursts. In times it can be really impactful, but sometimes you'll have, and I do this myself as a writer, a lot of these things that I've picked up from being edited by other people as a writer. Is like an early one that I learned, right, is the thing with like sentences on sentences, or even just a couple in a row with like really similar important words, or starting with the same word. And that's just like a good thing to look out for as a writer anyhow. But as an editor, So I'm not like, oh, it's a grammatical issue. It's more like it's a prose issue that we can make this all a little more tight or a little more streamlined, or cram these two sentences together because they don't need to be two, stuff like that. But every now and again, there will be even just like fine details. There was one of the stories in this that Joe picked up on, a whole thing with color. There was a bunch of color in this story, and Joe had and again, it was a suggestion, not a like make or break to be in the book, but a suggestion that like, you know, he thought it'd be a little tighter, work really well like thematically by having, there was like some differences with the colors, having them be, I don't know enough about color theory, but there was like color theory stuff involved, and the author was completely receptive and open to it, and it made what was already like an amazing story, it just added this like little 5% pop to it that makes it like have this additional kind of layer. So sometimes it's just like bolster it, helping to like push a thing in a direction that will bolster it up slightly.
Yeah, that's something I noticed a lot when reading, like the repetition, and even with my reviews, like I just used that word in the previous sentence, I can't use it again in this sentence. Like it stands out to me a lot for some reason. It's not like the or at it's like the door, the person went to the house, and then the house is whatever the next like, they use house 2 times in a row, you got to pick something different.
Exactly. And like, they're in the house now, like so, like feeling like on a granular level, like you don't need to contextualize it, right? Because you already contextualized it on a bigger level.
It sometimes takes an extra set of eyes to point that out, though, because I wrote one a couple of years ago that Ross Jeffrey sent back to me with just a bunch of red on it. He was like, he used this person's name like 6 times in like 2 or 3 paragraphs. And like I've been reworking it and changing it and stuff, but he's like, you're gonna want to change that, and I'm like, okay, yeah. And it made sense to me when I was writing it, right? But then when he looked at it, and he's got several books out, of course he caught it right away. I'm like, well, shit.
Like sometimes no matter how keen your eye is, you're simply too close to it, right? It's almost like you're inside of it, and so you can't, even if you read it and you reread it and you reread it and you reread it and you tweak it and like over and over again, you become too deep into the word.
It's right there in front of your face, but you're blinded by it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're reading in your head what you think it says, and it might be a complete typo on the page, or you use the wrong word, but in your head, you're like, oh, this is what it says.
That's one thing that I now do is I read everything aloud.
Okay.
Like
that probably helps out.
Read every single word. Make sure you're reading every single word.
Not what you think it says, but what it actually says.
Yep, exactly. I've heard printing it or changing the font is also helpful when you're doing like a kind of later edit, because your brain is seeing, like, printing it like you're looking at it now, not on a screen. It's more tangible. It's more visible, but like you're interacting with it in a different way, and like you can red pen it. But also just Ryan Harding suggested to me once, he was like, change the font when you get to those later stages of edits, because your brain has seen it all one very specific way the whole time you're writing it.
That makes sense.
Change the font, like go from a serif to a sans serif or whatever. Change the font. Now you're not seeing it in the same pattern that you were seeing it, and sometimes those things will stick out even like in a way they didn't before.
That's a good tip.
I've heard the printing thing, because you become screen blind after a while. And you think your mind's like reading something totally different from the screen. And I got bad eyes to begin with, so printing it off on laying on the couch reading it's a little bit different than being right here.
Absolutely.
And I'm not an editor or author or anything at all, but that stands out more to me than anything, is the repetition of words, more so than a typo would or anything. For some reason, that I catch that all the time. And it annoys me. I don't know why. It's like, pick a different word.
What do you find harder to edit, the short stories for these anthologies or the full-length novellas that you release?
I don't know. They're almost just two different beasts entirely.
Well, because you have less words to kind of fix things in the short stories, is what I'm thinking, so you have less to play with.
Yeah, it's also like anthologies or even single author collections, which I'm now starting to get into, but I avoided for a long time. They're different beasts than a novella, because it might even be like the same amount of words in a the whole totality of it, right? Like,
Yeah.
cool, I get to edit 40,000 words worth of stuff over the next week, or whatever it's going to take, usually a few days, but sometimes a week or two. And when you're doing short stories, you edit the short story and it doesn't take a crazy amount of time, typically a few hours or whatever, multiple reads. And then you're on to the next one, and the next one has a completely different flavor. The next one has a completely different style of voice, different subjects, different themes, different things you're looking out for. Even with a short story collection, like a collection, not an anthology, where it's the same writer, there's still going to be differences. There will be similarities, but there's going to be differences, like beyond the obvious. It's a different story, but like, because no writer writes the same way every time, really. There's always you always have to approach it as though it's a new thing. Whereas if you're editing a novella, you like get deeper in it in a weird way, because you're not suddenly, this chapter ends, now I'm switching to a completely different style of something.
Right.
It's all about in service to the totality of the whole story. So it's almost like the thought process behind the approach is different, or just the approach is different.
I'm glad you pointed that out with the collections and anthologies, because when I'm reviewing those anthologies and collections, I take forever. When someone gives me an arc of an anthology or collection, I take so much longer to read those, because, and even in my reviews, I actually say, you know how I do it. I read one or two, then I put it away for a while, because if you read 5 or 6, that first one is going to skew, change
blurs
the way
together.
Everything, and there's going to be a different voice in every single one. And then you're going to start thinking, okay, something's wrong with this third one, because it's not the same as the first one. So you have to cleanse your palate in between each one. And it takes me forever to, read an anthology or a collection because of that, because I want to give each one its chance to shine,
Yes, absolutely. That makes so much sense. Like from a reviewer perspective.
Right.
And I can totally see that line too, as an editor. And that's why I have avoided doing short story collections for so long, was specifically because, and I don't think he'll think I'm throwing him under the bus on this, but Chris Kelso, like, incredible fucking writer and like one of the nicest guys out there. He sent me pretty early on, after I took over Weirdpunk, I think it was in 2020, he sent me a short story collection to consider. And I really like him as a person, and I really like his writing. He's an incredible writer. And I looked at that, I read it, and it was a really good collection. It was super strong. This stuff is so weird and interesting. And I went, I don't think I know how to edit something like this. I don't think I can do. I was like, at that point, I was like, I understand how to edit different people's different stories in an anthology. I don't understand how to edit one person's different stories in a collection. So that was what ultimately made that decision back then, to be like, I'm never doing collections, because I just don't think I know like how to approach it. It seemed monumental. Again, it seemed bigger or just different, more complex than a novella or even an anthology. So for the longest time, I was like, no, I'm not doing this. And then last year, I was like, well, I have the rights to WALLOW back. I'm just gonna. I had a press approach me to put it out, and then they ended up not being able to. And I was like, I can just do this myself. I already kind of at that point, right? Of like, what can anyone else give me that I can't do myself? And that's not a slam on anybody, but I was just like, I have all the cards I need to make this happen in house. And so
I have both, by the way.
Yes, right.
I have to show it off. Yeah, I have both.
So I had that, like, I guess I need to learn how to do this, and learn how to do this with my own words, which is in some ways easier and in some ways harder. The good thing was that most of those had already been edited, because of appearing in other things, then also when the book itself, but also like when it came out through Nihilism Revised, it obviously got edited too. But then as time goes on, it's like I'm seeing like, oh shit, like this story has some stuff that got missed, and this story, you're hearing from people like there's some grammar errors in this story. It's like, okay, I made a bank of like, here's what I need to change. I went back through and fixed everything and changed everything and made it super tight. I even removed a story because
I was gonna say you cut one and you added one, right?
Yeah, I took one. I took the Verdant Holocaust out, and I added a novelette to the end because I went like, this will entice anybody who already has it. Like now, there's 10,000 new words in here.
There's power in the blood, right?
Yeah. There's power in the blood, and that had never been put in anything before. It was like new. I wrote it for the repress. So doing that, I was like, okay, like obviously, again, it's my own work, so it's kind of hard to judge. But I went, I think I more understand how to do this for someone else. And now there's at least 2, I think, if not maybe 3, short story collections coming out from Weirdpunk this year. So,
what was the
watching and listening? I know I reviewed the original one a while ago, and I mentioned Death Like Love is one of the most powerful, strongest short stories. Like there's so much in that as a short story, you know what I mean? And there's so much packed into that. It's still one of them, and I think I reviewed it what, last year, a year and a half ago?
Yeah, I think so.
Still
right around this time last year.
Probably. And it's still one of my favorite short stories of all time because I mean it's there's some passion in that. So I don't know if anyone in the audience here has the new version, but it's in there. So I mean, I'd pick it up just for that story alone. So go ahead, Brad. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's fine. What was the reasoning to take out that one story? Did you just feel like it didn't necessarily fit with the other ones anymore? Or?
Yeah, it wasn't as strong. It just simply wasn't as strong. It's that the story I removed was one of 2 that I wrote prior to Mo dying. The Prince of Mars and the Verdant Holocaust were the 2 that were from before she died. And I included those in the original version because she really liked both those stories. And specifically the Prince of Mars at the time was like her favorite story I'd ever written. And it was like kind of partially, it sounds weird, but like for her to include those. And that one also, the anthology that came out in like 4 people read. So it's like, I was so proud of that story. I was like, I'd really like people to read this. And I'm still like, I love that story. The other one had initially come out in the Misfits anthology that we did. And I, like, even when it came out, Emma was like, this part is pretty rough. Can you clean it up? Yeah. And I did a number of passes cleaning it up, and then she was satisfied, and it got into the book, and the book came out, blah, blah, blah. And I hadn't read it in a really long time. I probably hadn't read it since the original To Wallow came out. And I think I was too inside of everything at that time, just with the grief and the heaviness of doing that book. And that book came out around the same time that the Tarot Project, like my late wife was working on a tarot deck when she died, and we got a bunch of people to finish it and did a Kickstarter, and that came out, and it like all of these things like were happening back to back, like the New Flesh, like 2019, all 3 of those things happened. And it was like they were all like, it was like month, like back to back to back, 3 giant projects all kind of culminating. So I've been working on all of them at the same time, and I think I was just like too in it at the time to recognize that story just wasn't as strong, especially like the latter third. And so when I went back to put it all to put it out again, or to put the new version out, I was like, I'm gonna like really, really clean all of these up to get them as fucking airtight as I can. And that one, I still really like the first roughly half to 2/3. I'm really proud of, and I really liked that.
Right.
And then the latter third is just a fucking mess. And I kept trying to edit it, and I was like, I can't edit this. Like, not that it's beyond, like, it's not too far gone. I just don't have the attachment to it that I do every other story in this book. And that tells me that it doesn't have to be in the book anymore.
Yeah.
That it was maybe served the book at the time when a Nihilism Revised put it out in 2019 before the.
But I mean, times changed.
Yeah, exactly. So. Just for the book in 2021 and the second to the last day of the year 2021, I think I put it out December 30th. It just doesn't need to be in here anymore. And there's nothing like, it wasn't some moral thing, it wasn't an ethical thing. there's nothing in that story that I wouldn't potentially write now. But it just as a story didn't really land for me now or at that time, but still now.
Yeah.
Like, fuck it, I'm cutting it out. I'm adding 10,000 more words. If people really desperately want to read that story, it's in the Misfits book. That book is still in print. I'm just going to take it out and add this new thing. And I think it made it like just better. It just made it more cohesive. It made it, that story had a grief aspect to it, but not in the same way that the other ones do. That was kind of more about the disillusionment of a friendship. Whereas even the Prince of Mars, again, written before Mo died, is about the loss of someone you love. So like that theme just now completely runs through the book.
Yeah. Did you have anybody else look over it? Because like we were talking about earlier, you can be too close to your own stuff and maybe miss some stuff. Did you have anybody else look over it for you after you did all your edits and stuff?
Yeah, I had a couple people's eyes on it. No one person on the totality of it. But I had, like I said, I had kept a document, and I had a couple friends tell me, like, there's a couple things in this story, there's a couple things in this story. And then I had a couple people look at sections of it, basically, a couple stories here, a couple stories there. 3 or 4 friends looked at There Is Power in the Blood for me, because I was really worried about that one with being like, I'm adding this longer piece to a book that is now 2 years old, which again, I wanted to do just so that there would be added value for someone who may have read it prior.
But you know, bands do that all the time. They release the greatest hits album and they add 1 or 2 new songs.
Right.
And people are like, yeah.
I was like, well, I'm just gonna write a novelette for it, because I had this idea for something that felt very in line with the stories in that book. And it's up to anybody else if it works. I had a really hard time figuring out where to place it, because I didn't want to disrupt the general flow of how that book had been prior, because I thought it flowed really nicely. There's kind of bookends, and like the first 2 stories and the last 2 stories sort of mirror each other. And I also didn't know if it was like a bit of a gamble to add something after that last story, after Death Like Love, because that's such an impactful gut punch of a story that I was like, is this like diminishing the work by tagging a thing at the end? But I kind of had to just go like, I don't know where else to put it, so I'm just gonna put it.
With it being the longest one, I mean, I think the ending is fine. Yeah, I was shocked that it was after Death Like Love, but when I saw it was more of a novelette, longer than the others, you know, we're gonna put it right in the middle. Just
exactly.
Just confuse people. Put it right in the middle. Yeah.
It also didn't work to throw it at the beginning, because like the story to Wallow and Ash is like that is the
I mean those bookends, those are actual bookends. Those two, you know, but it works.
I mean, you do what you can, I guess.
It's just like, it's like bonus content. You get your bookends and there's bonus at the end.
Yes, exactly.
It's the end of the scene, end of the credits scene, you know.
It's your post-credit scene. But it's longer than the movie itself.
Here's a 10,000 word post-credit scene.
Here's a whole extra part for you. So I want to get into what's coming up this year to talk about some, but you want to kind of break things up and throw this game in there just to see how bad this goes. Brad, you want to do this?
Last time we played Cronenberg movie trivia, I think you got almost everything right. I'm pretty sure. So this time it's not at all. It's something
we're trying to go with the whole weird theme, Weirdpunk Books, weird theme. So it's a little bit of a true and false.
Okay.
Or no, what would you call it? Weird and false. Go ahead.
Weird and false.
Go ahead and play your intro.
My award-winning intro.
Yeah.
Weird or false? Jay hates those so much.
I don't hate them. They're so bad. They're so bad. I love them.
They're supposed to be that bad.
I feel like I'm just gonna get shredded on this one.
I have the questions here. You two are going to decide if these are true or false. Okay. All right. And I worked a whole 20 minutes gathering these up from the internet, so they could be wrong. I don't know. You're not supposed to believe half the stuff you see on the internet. So here we go. Number 1, true or false?
We'll let Sam answer first, and then
okay. True or false? Spider silk was once used to make guitar strings. Spider silk.
I would say false, but I don't know enough about spider silk to know how thick it can get.
I'm gonna agree with Sam. I feel like it would break too easy.
Yeah.
Especially with the pick and stuff.
Yeah.
It is false, but it was one time used for violin strings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of
weird.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay.
That had to be hard to make.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they use several.
Yeah, like weaving it.
They're just milking the spiders.
Yeah. I'm picturing the same way. I'm picturing the same way they do sheep. Either they cut the coats off, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that there was at one point there was some poor spider silk farming boy who is like sitting in the dungeon, silking the spider, who was like, one of these days I'll work my way up to playing these violins.
Wonder how they tune the strings. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2. I told you these are bad. Number 2, true or false? There is a company that turns dead bodies into coral reefs. Dead bodies into coral reefs. True or false?
I might think that could possibly be true. I think weird. I'm gonna give that a weird true.
A weird. I think I'm gonna agree. I could. Dead bodies or skeletons? Does it say? Does it matter?
It just says dead bodies. Yeah, into coral reefs.
I could see that. I could see someone saying, "My last wish is to be in the ocean and have crabs crawl over me for eternity."
It is true.
I'm gonna go weird. True.
It is true. There's a company called Eternal Reefs, and apparently they mix a cremated remains of a person with concrete, and they create like a fake pearl.
Oh, okay.
And this pearl, it's weird. It becomes encased in a reef ball. In a reef ball, it is dropped into the sea, and it provides a new habitat for fish and other sea life, and it starts the whole cycle of life. Yeah,
that's totally not what I was picturing at all. I was just picturing them dumping bodies off the boat, and then sinking to the bottom.
Well, when I saw the question, I figured it was like John Doe's and Jane Doe's, where they never figure out who they are. Like,
they're all
it's all a front for a company that helps serial killers.
Yeah, some serial killers taking notes right now.
Coral reefs, huh? That's really interesting.
That's like the third season of Mindhunters.
That's like the thing where you can have your body like in the tree ball roots, and they bury the tree, but you're the roots part of it, and it grows from your body. It's kind of cool. It's really weird. I would never do it, but that's pretty cool.
When we were in Denver for StokerCon, my girlfriend and I went to a metal brewery there, and we were sitting on their patio outside having some beers. We overheard a conversation between a woman and a man, and she was telling this guy about her job, and she worked for a company that it's like green burials, but they do something different where they liquefy the remains and do some process to it that turns it into a nutrient-dense water. And then they pulverize the bone. They use some machine to completely pulverize the bone. And using that, I want to say they plant trees using the bone as it's
like bone meal,
pod seed thing, and then the liquid to first give it nutrients.
That's so weird.
And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard.
Like, can you imagine reading someone's will and it's like, I want to be liquefied and my bones crushed so I can nutrient a tree. Like,
and then somebody's like, I can DIY this. I got a Vitamix.
I know. I got to see the process of this. Is this on PBS? I got to see the process of this beginning to end.
I wish I could remember the company. It was we were like looking at each other, and she was behind me, and we're both just totally eavesdropping. Like, what the fuck is this? This is so cool.
And you're DIYing and the police busted in, like, no, this is what they wanted, I promise.
Check the will.
You've got your ninja blenders about to explode. And
nice. All right, number 3, and I had to grab this one because story of the eye, making a connection. True or false? Alfred Hitchcock was frightened by eggs.
By eggs?
He was frightened of eggs.
What a
true or false?
I might give that a true. I don't know, but sure.
I'm gonna say false.
It is true. At some point, this is a quote from 1963. Yeah, I did some research on this one. I'm frightened of eggs, worse than frightened. They revolt me. That white round thing without any holes. And when you break it inside, there's that yellow thing round without any holes. Blood is jolly, red, but egg yolk is yellow, revolting. I've never tasted it.
I really like the idea that his first problem is that it's white and has no holes. Is he also terrified of baseballs?
Yeah.
Golf balls don't bother him.
Yeah. If it's not a nipple ball, get it away from me.
It's called a fear of eggs. Is ovophobia. Is a fear of eggs.
Ovophobia.
How strange.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's funny that Alfred Hitchcock.
I mean,
out of all the things, all the horror stuff he did, he's scared of eggs.
I'm mostly sad that we never got his egg horror movie. Then
there you go.
Yeah, that is sad. Yeah. All right, number 4, true or false?
There we go. Hold on. In Psycho, instead of the knife, he's cracking eggs over her head in the shower.
Oh no, somebody's out egging the house.
Egging house. It's too horrible.
Instead of a haunted house. Yeah. Okay. Number 4. True or false? Goldfish only have a memory of 3 seconds.
I've heard that that factoid. The problem is I can't remember if it's true or not.
Right.
I think it might be slightly longer than that, if I remember right.
So you're saying false.
I'm gonna It's like, do I follow the I've heard that before, or I'm pretty sure I heard it in the context that it was wrong. I'm gonna say
there's too much thought going into this, really.
I think it's closer to 8.
Give him a few extra. I'm gonna say false because they know when you come to feed them, they recognize that, they remember something.
So you both are saying false.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say false.
It is false. It didn't tell me how many seconds they really have. It just said false. And I'm like, what the hell?
Well, how many was in the question? Was it 3 seconds?
It said 3.
It's really 4.5.
It's really 4.
It's close enough.
Yeah. So okay. We're sinking here. What is it? Number 5. Okay. True or false?
This is comedy gold, Jay.
True or false? This is what happens when you leave the game up to me. Okay. Number true or false? Pigs don't sweat.
I have heard that before. Again, that's another one that I'm like, did I just hear that and it's actually bullshit? I'll say true. I'll say true. I know that their skin is really, really similar to human skin, to the point where especially old school tattoo artists would practice on pig skin before touching human skin. But I also don't think that just because their skin is similar doesn't mean they maybe don't have sweat glands. So I'm going to say that that's true.
I'm gonna go false because sweating like a pig, that just sounds fake. I'm gonna go false. Everybody says I'm sweating like a pig, so I'm gonna go false.
Okay. Well, the answer is true. So when people when they do say they're sweating like a pig, they're just fucking liars because pigs don't sweat. According to the internet.
According to the internet.
According to the website I got these questions from.
Very reputable website. Exactly. QAnonFacts.com.
All right, here we go. True or false? Number 6. True or false? Fingernails and hair continue to grow after death.
That is false. The reason people think that is because as the body decays, the skin pulls away from the scalp skin pulls away. The finger skin pulls away from them, so they don't actually grow. They just appear longer.
Yep, I agree. I knew that one. That was false.
Yeah, that was. Yeah. My
cousin is a mortician or works in the funeral home, so I knew that one.
I think Sam read the answer verbatim. Just
it's fascination with death. Your whole life will lead you down some interesting paths.
Well, you think way back in the day, people would probably believe that if they had to dig up a body for whatever reason.
Yeah, because they're like, "Oh my god!"
I had to throw it in there because it was hard. I got 9 instead of 10 questions. Okay, it was hard to find these, so I had to throw it in there. All right, number 7. True or false? or weird and false, whatever we're just naming the game is. I've done lost track. We're going to talk about rats. Rats laugh when they are tickled.
That's so bizarre. Why do
Rats
they
laugh when they are tickled? I don't know who the person is that's tickling the rats, or if these are New York rats that are the size of cats. But rats laugh when they are tickled. True or false?
Now I just want to know what that sounds like. I bet it's terrifying.
Oh.
It's like you're in the woods camping and you hear just the most horrible thing. Don't worry, it's just the laughing rats.
It's just a rat tickle party.
I know. If it's true, it could be false.
I literally don't know at all, but I'm gonna go ahead and say sure. What the fuck? It's true.
I'm gonna say true because I want it to be true because I want to know what it sounds like.
It is freaking true. I'm going to YouTube this and find out. Rats laughing.
Rats laughing.
Like, I don't know. This is nuts. Okay. Number 8. We're going to go back to spider webs.
Okay.
Just because we can. All right. Spider webs were used as bandages in ancient times. True or false?
That's another one that I feel like maybe could go either way if there's some real intense spiders with real intense webs that don't, fall apart.
Again, way too much thought into this.
I like it every time. It's like I'm on fucking Who Wants to Be a Millionaire talking it through.
I know.
Call your lifeline.
Yeah, trying to use like.
Do you want to ask the people in the chat?
Yeah, I would wonder if like maybe like a wolf spider or something, maybe those. But I don't know. I'm gonna say true. I think it's not true, but in my heart of hearts, I want it to be true. So I'm gonna say true.
I'm gonna say true. I think I could see that happening because it's sticky. It's gonna adhere pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, it is true. Supposedly, spider webs have a natural antiseptic and antifungal built in somewhere. So
that makes sense.
And so in ancient times, they used it. So, all right, bringing it home with this one.
This last one?
Yeah, I know. Are you sweating? Number 9.
A little bit.
We're going to end it on a number 9, not number 10 like most shows do. Number 9, true or false?
We're different like that.
You're more likely to get a computer virus from visiting religious sites than porn sites.
That has to be true. If there's any justice in the world, that's true. So I'm going to say it's fucking true.
I'm going to say false just to be opposite.
Okay.
I don't know.
It is true. According to Simon Tech, the security firm, religious websites carry 3 times more malware threats than pornography sites.
Here's why I thought that might be true.
That's going to be my excuse next time my wife catches me.
Hey, there's less malware on this site, I promise.
Exactly.
I figure my logic behind it is that I figure that religious sites are more likely, like the website itself, that build is more likely to be done by someone just like in the church or in the church office, maybe doesn't know about cybersecurity, who maybe doesn't know about any kind of back end stuff other than like, I can build a WordPress site or something. Whereas I feel like generally your porn sites, they're like, security is a big deal, especially if they have like a login area and stuff. It's like that stuff has to be secure.
Yeah, because you have to do the HTTP. You have to get the S on there. That's something extra with the security stuff.
The religious sites are saying under construction coming Christmas of 2014. And now it's 2022. So okay, we made it through that.
Tim says that milking silk sounds like a Weirdpunk title.
Tim, write that book. Write that book and send it to me.
All the comments from the game. Paperweights made of human ash. I think I've seen that before. Paperweights made of human ash.
There's a company that'll press ashes into a vinyl record.
Oh, I have heard of that.
I always wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Does it actually like play music on there?
Yeah. You can. I think you can do up to 5 or 10 copies.
That's crazy.
I don't remember if it's one-sided or if they can do 2, but think there are some limitations because they're putting Ash in there.
Right.
Yeah.
When I don't know how long it lasts too. Like, I mean, I don't know if people are like playing it constantly. It's more of a keepsake, but you know, Ash I'm sure Ash over a long period of time will also
degrade and stuff.
Degrade somehow. So
not as morbid, but I know you can make jewelry out of like breast milk and stuff. They like make little pearls out of it and like put it on a ring or necklace or whatever. That's
I didn't know that.
Just as weird, but not as morbid.
Yeah.
Right, Laurel? It just got really dark, didn't it? I mean, and I think it was the game that made it go that way.
Yeah. So Hitchcock needs holes. Needed holes.
Wow.
It's a big surprise if stuff gets dark when I'm here.
So we'll segue because we were talking
We'll
segue to before the game. You're talking about single person collections. So you're working on one right now. And speaking of pornography, right? Pornography for the end of the world.
That's the fucking best.
That's a great segue.
That was seamless. I fucking love that. Yeah, the After Stories of the Eye, the next Weirdpunk release, will be the second short story collection from Brendan Vedito. It's called Pornography for the End of the World. And if y'all don't know Brendan, or if you do, his first collection came out a few years ago, from Clash Books, called Nightmares and Ecstasy. It won the Wonderland. I think it came out in 2018. Because he won the Wonderland the year before me. And he and I also obviously did the New Flesh. And he's one of my best friends, and he's also an incredible fucking writer. And this book is bleak and dark and weird and haunting and visceral and sexy and all sorts of really intense things all at once. And it's going to be, I can't remember how many stories it is. I think it's 8 or 9. Just off the top of my head, I can't quite remember. But we recently bought a painting from a Polish artist who did a lot of Polish movie posters. And we haven't revealed it yet, but it's fucking insanely cool. And I'm very excited to get that out and for people to read that. It'll be out next month as well, I believe.
So 2 next month.
Yeah, I'm just going to crank 2 out.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been such a. I mean, again, he and I did the New Flesh together. He's amazing. He's an amazing writer, but he's also a great friend, and it's just so fun to work with him. Him on this book. We got some really stellar blurbs on it. Like the people who've read it really, really liked it. Yeah, it's super cool. Kind of a lot of body horror, a lot of just really intense stuff. He's talked about this publicly, so I don't feel like I'm saying anything he wouldn't. But he had childhood lupus, and that like affected his. He would have visions sometimes of like really intense like horror imagery, and I know like having that illness very much in fact like influenced and informed how he writes and what he writes. So it always, I don't know, his stuff's just like so intense and so visceral. And I'm really excited for him to have a new book and also to be publishing it.
So where did that title come from? Because that's definitely a title that makes you like, oh, what's this book about?
Yeah, that was straight him. He was like, this is what I want to call it. I was like, let's fucking go.
Does that correspond to any of the stories in there, or is it just
there is
a random title?
There is a story. It's not that title, but there's a story in that's also in. So it'll include the story that he wrote for Cinema Viscera, which I put out last year, and his story in that, which I can't remember the name of.
I got it. Hold on.
Yeah. What is it again?
Nostalgia Night at the Snuff Palace.
Yeah, the Palace. So that story is about like a post-apocalyptic scenario with these crazy rock monsters, this really desolate, fucked up future, and it's this group of people making a trek to like the last movie theater. And I don't want to give anything away, but like Everybody's going to this movie theater for reasons, and the reasons are like really intense and it's really depressing. But it's a phenomenal book, and that the title, or it's a phenomenal story, and the title very much, the title of his collection very much reflects that specific story.
Nice. You said there's about 8 stories in there or so?
It's like between 8 and 10. I just can't remember off the top of my head. I haven't formatted it yet, so it's I haven't been in it in that way yet, which is when I usually memorize something.
You were working with the cover artist. Did you all, I guess, say I'd like this, this, and this on the cover, and they painted it, or just was it more broad?
We straight up bought a piece that already existed that was used. So I just like. I like to do this with any artist or any author who I'm putting out their book, is we like have the conversation about cover art, because it's important to me that the author has a lot of say in that. Obviously, it has to be in line on like an aesthetic level with Weirdpunk stuff. I think the books all look really good. I want them to look really good. I have to like them. I want the author to like them. And so I usually go like, send me a group of artists, or send me even other existing stuff, like other book covers, but also like album covers, send me movie posters, send me like in a vibe that you're looking for. We can try to capture that. Or if you have a specific image,
like one of those mood boards on Pinterest,
Pinterest
or something.
I think I remember you mentioning that last time about Ali C's book. About the
same type of thing. And it's just like, I try to have it be a whole process of like discussion, so we can actually nail down some tone or vibe that fits the book and also makes us both happy. And so he sent me a few artists and of just stuff that he liked from them, mostly thinking we would potentially commission one of them to make a painting or a graphic design thing or a drawing or whatever for us. And one of them was this Polish movie poster guy. And I was like, well, I'm going to reach out to him and see if because some artists, especially artists with stuff that's like, this was from the 70s, would be like, well, I own the rights to it. I can sell rights use. So I just reached out. I was like, hey, like, I'm a small press from Minneapolis. Got this book. We love your stuff. There's a couple of them that we really like. What do you do that for things that have already been movie posters? And if so, what's your cost breakdown like? And he got back to me and he was like, here's kind of my general cost breakdown, and is there one specific one? And so then Brendan and I talked about it further. I was like, okay, if like these are potentially up for grabs, what's the one we want? And we both narrowed it down to 3. And for both of us, it was like 2 of the 3 were the same. And then of the one that was different, we ended up going with the one that he sent that I hadn't seen. It was just an image I hadn't seen on the website. And we were both like, this is fucking perfect. And so I hit the guy up, and it ended up being this really weird. I've never done an international money transfer to a artist in Poland for a not insubstantial amount of money before.
Oh,
yeah. And I was like,
I'd be scared. Yeah.
It's not fishing me, because I contacted him. This is his official website, like listed everywhere as his official website. But he was like, yeah, Poland, we can't really do PayPal. Venmo doesn't work here. Can you just go to your bank and do an international wire? And I
try to talk you out of it.
I went, so I tried to do it online, and there's like a few different ways you can do it, but I couldn't find like the right way. So I was just like, oh, fuck it, I'll go to my bank. And the person there was like, well, you can do it online. Here's where. But do you know the person?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, not really, but like I contacted them. I'm buying a piece of art. And they're like, okay, just like. And so I sent it, and I didn't know how long it would take, so I sent him the receipts and stuff. I was like, here's my process that I sent it. And even without like a moment's hesitation, he had sent me the files. Like he didn't even get the money yet. It took like 4 more days for him to get the money. And he was like, here's the files. Let me know if you need anything else. I was like, okay, cool, we're good. I did not just get scammed for a lot of money.
I'm probably going to butcher his name.
How much were you sweating, though?
Yeah.
His name's Wisław Walkuski.
Yeah.
Sort of, maybe that ballpark.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it because I was like, I'm going to butcher it.
I'll butcher it for you. I'm horrible at pronouncing names. Everybody knows that. So I'll butcher it for you.
Yes. If you look him up, his art is really fucking cool. And I don't know, I have in my bedroom. I have a couple old Polish like horror movie posters. I love the aesthetics from that movement, that graphic art. He does like paintings, but so rad. And we're just like, fuck. It was even like slightly outside of my budget, but I was like, we're just gonna do it. We'll just make it work because it's.
So without, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, it's just clearly the right choice for the book. So I'll just do it. I don't care.
So without saying what movie it is, so you don't give away the cover, what is it for, a horror movie, or was it for something different, or you don't know?
It was all in Polish. So like, yeah, so I don't
magical romance or something.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Space erotica. That's
Space erotica.
I think I did see at one point what it was for, but I don't remember. But like on the original version, it's like all in Polish, and I was like, I don't fucking know. And I was like, you have versions without the text, right? He's like, oh yeah, I'll send you the textless versions. Okay.
It would be funny if it was a porn movie. That would just be fun.
It very well might have been a really fucked up porn movie. But once you see the cover art, you'll be like, okay, that could track.
If you put the text on it, told you it was one thing and it turned out to be something else. You know how when people get like the Chinese symbols, tattoos, and they think, oh, this means spirit. And no, that means donkey.
Asshole.
You know? Yeah. So you pretty much have the year planned out for what you're releasing.
Yeah, I have all but one. So I've got Stories of the Eye, Pornography for the End of the World, Joe Quinnell's short story collection, debut short story collection. And I talked to her a couple times this week, and she was like, I have 1.5 stories to go, and that'll be done. And she's like she's a teacher, so
I actually follow her on
so
Instagram.
School just ended, so after she's doing some stuff right now, but after that she said she'd have the time.
Just a side note, everybody, if you haven't read
she's incredible. Like people,
that was her debut too, right?
Yep.
As far as novella.
Yep. People need to read her. She is outrageously talented, and I feel like underread. Like I really want more people to read her. And it's Pride Month, so you should really read her. And you should not just read her because it's Pride Month. You should read her all year long, because she's fucking incredible. So I hit her. I was like, do you have a collection? I want to put out a collection from you. And she's like, let me write a couple more things, and then a few more things. So she's got 1.5 left. So that'll be up hopefully like fallish, I'm guessing, maybe winter. She thought she was going to get it done sooner than she did. I was hoping to have it like summer, but it's fine. We'll get it done later. So that'll be sometime this year. And then my next collection will be this year too, which is sitting in a folder completely done. And I don't have a title for it. I keep, it should be this. I keep kind of changing my mind on it. But it'll be, more of the same. Laurel, that's Joe Quinnell.
Wrote the Mud Ballad.
Mud Ballad
was just that dope ass cover with the pig on it.
This was 2 years ago. Was this 2 years ago?
Yeah, that was 2020.
I can't remember when I read it. Yeah, so
that's Neil Auk who did that cover, and we're gonna get him to do the cover for her collection too.
Oh, nice.
I was like, what kind of thing? She was like, let's do Neil again, because then they were like a piece. They're together. They're like uniform. Yeah. And initially,
I love that.
Go ahead.
I was say I love that his are photographs, and it's not like he painted or anything. That's a real pig head he took a picture of.
Yeah, it's so cool to be and we were the first press to have a Neil cover. I think Grindhouse were the first to buy one, but then that book didn't come out until recently. Neil is an old friend of mine. Like he lives here. He's a Canadian. He lives in Canada now, but he lived in Minneapolis.
You won't hold it against him though, right?
Yeah, I won't. Not right. He's an old friend of mine, just from like the horror fan scene here. And we're never like super close, but we'd hang out. We were part of a group, and he was just the coolest guy. And he used to be a theoretical physicist. My brain always wants to say physician, which would be a much more interesting thing. Yeah, theoretical.
Yeah, just take this and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. We could change it for the story. I mean, we're talking about fiction here, so
yeah, you use that for something. Yeah, he was a theoretical physicist, and he lived here because he worked at the U of M, doing physics stuff, and then he moved to Cambridge or whatever in the UK, where Stephen Hawking, the college Stephen Hawking worked at. Like, he worked with Stephen Hawking.
That's crazy.
And then he ended up back in Canada, and I think, and he's been open about this, but like he hit a real wall with the academic world and was like, I'm going to do something else, and he mixed up his whole life.
You should take pictures of Stephen Hawking for covers.
Yeah.
Wow, that just got kind of
that got real dark, Jay.
Yeah, it's really, he had hit me up ages ago to be like, I'm trying to get into like seeing if presses would want to buy my photos for books.
Yeah.
And I was like, I suggested a bunch of here's presses who I know who put out cool work.
Yeah.
Who would probably be interested in, who aren't shitbags. And one of them was Grindhouse. So I thought it was really cool that they were the first to purchase. But then, yeah, we were able to be the first press to have a cover from him. So it all kind of came full circle of this, like, oh yeah, this is an old friend of mine.
That's cool. He has a very specific aesthetic. Like, you see a cover, you're like, you know who, even though I don't remember his name, but I was like, I know who did that.
Yep. Yeah,
who
absolutely.
took that picture.
Yep. Yeah. So we already picked out, I haven't talked to Neil yet, but we already picked out what photo will be for Josie's book. She told me the other day, she's like, for sure this one.
Nice.
Yeah.
So he's got some pre-made ones on a website or something, or
he doesn't do pre-mades, but he'll do licensing on existing photos.
Okay.
He'll also, I know for Grindhouse, like, they commissioned one.
Right.
So okay. What elements do you want? How do you want it to look? Blah blah blah. And he'll like set it up and do that. But I just like with the Mud Ballad, it was, we were talking about cover. I had suggested him. We both looked at that specific image, and we're like, well, this is the one. This is the book. And that's, Josie was like, yeah, I mean, Josie's bought, or Joe Quinnell has bought, like, she said she bought like 3 or 4 of his prints, like, that are in her house now, and including obviously the one that the Mud Ballad is.
Yeah.
But
she actually bought that one.
Yeah, she's got it up in her.
Does she have the NFT? I'm kidding. I gotta stop doing that. I gotta.
Oh my god, yes.
I have no clue about that stuff. That's why I was reading an article earlier today about somebody going to an NFT gallery, and they were confused because it was just a bunch of TV screws showing the artwork, and they didn't know what to do. So I'm confused with it.
Yep.
There was I think Seth Green bought, there's like the monkey, the sad monkey NFT or something monkey, and someone stole it. He was going to make like a TV show about it, and someone somehow stole it from him. So now he can't make the TV show because he doesn't own the rights to the NFT monkey or whatever. It's so I don't understand what's going on.
The whole thing is a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. It literally is. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's really funny.
I think it's funny that he got it stolen from him. Like, he had this whole it was lined up. It was going to go to pilot and everything, and he can't do it because he doesn't own the rights to this. I
remember a few years back, like, bands started doing, like, Metallica like released an NFT of one of their albums, and I'm like,
has it been around that long?
$500 some $1,000. I'm like, but I have the MP3s at home. I don't understand what is the difference. I mean,
I could right click on it and save picture as, and it's mine.
Exactly.
But
it's not on the blockchain, so you don't really own it. You don't
like, who cares?
It's not a thing. Stop trying to make it a thing.
I should tell them I got it from Napster and just make them, upset.
LimeWire. Remember LimeWire?
Yeah.
So we're set with this year. Last year was very successful. I mean, Maria Abrams, one of my favorite ones from last year. Ali C, and then of course the Eric LaRocca book we have to
speak about. Last year?
Yep.
Yeah. So it seems like this year you're doing a lot more anthologies and collections. It's a whole different direction, basically. Did you realize you were doing that, or it was just the way everything fell in your lap? Last year was novellas. This year it's more short stories, anthologies, collections.
Initially, I was like, this will be the anthology and 4 novellas, and then just as the more I thought about the collections thing, and then it was like, Joe is working on a collection, and Brendan had this collection already in the bag, and I have my next collection done. I was like, well, I guess that's what it just kind of, the cards fell into place. Mm-hmm. And I think for the 5th spot this year, it's highly likely that it'll be a novella. I have 10 things in my inbox to read, novella submissions to read, and one short story collection submission to read. So I've got a choice to make for the last one, and it's odds are high that I'll pick up at least a few from that all of books, and it'll be like the last one for the year, and then the next 2 for next year or something. But yeah, it wasn't an intentional pivot away from novellas. Novellas are honestly still my favorite thing to work on, to publish. It just kind of worked out this year that it was good that it'd be a collection heavy year. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
So next year, I think you should just go with novels.
Yeah, just full on novels. That's
just 800-page chunkers.
I have a hard limit on the reason that I do know.
I remember you saying that before. That's why. Yeah. But you're tackling all of the you tackled novellas last year. You're tackling the anthology short story collections this year. What's left? Novels. You know.
Yeah, or novels. Yeah, I
think you do novels like 250 pages or so.
Do a series.
Oh my God, that's. Weirdpunk will never publish series.
No, but they can be developed like one author, 5 books. Okay, part 1, like make it like a serial, like
the Green Mile.
The Green Mile was originally.
I'm not a sequels guy.
I'm just messing with you.
Yeah. I love like a standalone thing, and that's it, and that's all you get. So I'll never do.
Would you ever do like a loose series where they're like the splatter western stuff? Like they're all not related, but it's all sort of the same theme. Would you ever do anything like that? Maybe.
If I was
not necessarily splatter western, but something like that.
I'm just gonna wholesale steal Death's Head Press's idea.
Just take splatter western. Weird westerns. There you go.
I do have a splatter western in my inbox.
Get the NFT on it.
If my output was higher, because I think. Like Death's Head was doing the splatter westerns and other books. Yeah. So it was like they had the series going on, but they were doing other books. And I just don't think with only doing like 4 to 6 books in a year, it doesn't make it be like there's 2 in this series coming out this year, isn't it's just that I don't know. It's just I don't think it would work for how I do it. So I probably not.
What is I want to ask about your collection. Is there sort of a central theme with yours coming out that's different from To Wallow and Ash and Sorrow, or is it just kind of a mixed mash of different stories?
Yeah, it is. It's similar and it's different.
It's the same but different.
Yeah, it's still that type of my story for the most part. The darker. Just like sadder stuff, because I think like we're at like Fox-Devils has emotional weight.
Wait, you're saying it's darker and sadder than?
Well, no, not that. It's on the side of this. It's not darker and sadder.
I don't know if I can take any more.
It's just more in line with that because I feel like as a writer, I'm sort of 2 minds ish, where I have the stuff that I do that's in that more grief or just like very emotionally heavier stuff. And then I have like Sabbath of the Fox-Devils it has emotional weight to it. I made sure to because that's rooted so much in my childhood, it can't not. But it's also fun. I think that book's really fun.
It is fun.
I wouldn't characterize To Wallow as fun.
Right. I'm still waiting for the graphic novel of this. By the way.
I would love
needs to happen.
I would
whoever did the cover art needs to
get Michael Bukowski to work on a graphic novel with me. That'd be amazing. Yeah, so this one is a lot more in line with To Wallow in terms of that like more emotionally dense, heavy stuff. But there's a couple stories like this. The story that's in Laser Mall is going to be in there, and I don't know if people who've read that or not. It's veering closer to what's what's like the kind of flavor that I do with Sabbath, but it's also about grief. So a lot of the stories are about grief, but they're less about like my wife died. It's been more me trying to put those emotions, like resonating those emotions in other types of stories. It's still a lot of loss. It's still a lot of, but it's like there's a story in the next collection that's about a son, like an adult son whose mom dies, and him dealing with the aftermath of that. And it's this kind of really sad cosmic horror thing. And that story that's in Laser Mall is about there's a husband, but it's also about a kid whose mom died, and so there's, I don't know, just like trying to not do the same type of story. I feel like I did an entire book of like, here's a bunch of stories where because my wife died, so I wrote stories about my wife dying, which is, a thing that I'll still continue to do. But I was like, I need to stretch myself and not just constantly have like wife is dead stories.
Same tone, same ballpark, but not exactly the same.
Yeah.
And you also have a story I don't know if it's out yet, in Let the Weirdness In, the tribute to Kate Bush. Is that out already or not yet?
Yeah, that came out last month, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that I am so excited to have been a part of that.
Who released that one?
That's Heads Dance Press.
That's who it was.
That's Evan St. Jones, and they had invited me to that. So we're friends. We talk shop sometimes. We talk writing. They've been a huge Weirdpunk supporter, and they're just an awesome person. And they had hit me up because at one point, like a while ago, I posted some fucking Kate Bush meme. I don't know a ton about Kate Bush. My girlfriend is a fan, and I've heard some Kate Bush, and I like some of what I've heard for sure. I just think she's an interesting person. And Evan hit me up and was like, are you a Kate Bush fan? Because I'm going to do this book. And I was like, I don't know enough about her to call myself a fan, but certainly some of her music is really cool. But I would love to write something trying to capture a vibe, because there's this mystique about her, and there's this, like, I don't know, just there's something, she's hard to grasp almost. There's this mystical aspect to her music and to her whole vibe. There's a lot of theatrical elements, and I was just like, I'm gonna write a story for that. And I ended up being super influenced. I don't know if you know, like, the classic Weird Tales cover with the lady with like the bat. She's like got a bat mask on.
Yeah.
Right.
I like love that image.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just gonna like take that idea of this theatrical bat thing, and I wrote a story about 1920s Parisian, like in Paris, like theater of this group of thespians doing some kind of underground play from this playwright. And it's like a play that's like been known to be slightly dangerous for the performers, where they get swept away by like kind of the spirit of the stage and the spirits of the wild that it's trying to tap into. And I referenced there's I can't remember the album, but there's an album cover of hers that's like it's from the 70s or 80s, but it's like a painting with all of these animal faces. And I took that and I like tried to incorporate stuff from all over her career. Even the reason I thought of the Weird Tales bat head lady is because there's a promo photo of Kate Bush like with bat wings.
I've seen that one.
Like it like clicked for me with that, and I just tried to write something a little outside of. It's still me. It's just maybe, and it still gets pretty fucking horrific. But I was like, I want to write something that's like the tonally different. I don't tend to do period pieces, other than I guess technically Fox-Devils said in the 80s it's a period piece.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a stretch for a period piece.
I've done a couple like set in the 80s or 90s, but I don't tend to. It's either 80s or 90s, or it's just contemporary.
But to the kids today, that's the late 1900s.
Yeah. No, exactly. It really,
it is. My 13-year-old tells me that's the late 1900s.
Yeah. It's the late.
You're like, I hate you now. I feel really old.
Yeah, but I was just like, I'm going to do something that's a little different from anything I've ever done. And luckily they liked it. And I'm like next to so many friends and fantastic writers in that one. Like Leo X. Robertson is in that. Joe Koch is in that. Maria Abrams is in that. Like a bunch of friends and other great writers. So it's really an honor to be a part of that one.
So you got to stretch your writing chops with that one, do a little bit something different.
Yeah. Again, like I feel like I kept not even falling into, because I don't think the stories are the same, but the core of so many of my stories are like person loses their spouse and deals with it the worst way possible. And I was like, maybe I should try to. I need to be doing other things, like things other than that.
And she came up recently, isn't she on? Or her music's in Stranger Things 4 or something like that. People were talking about her.
Like, I think it just got like hit, like it was like trending and hit a bunch of top 40 stuff or whatever, because suddenly a bunch of people who weren't aware of her were aware of her, which is really cool. Like how else is that stuff gonna find, like that happens all the time, where especially younger people who weren't around for something, they end up hearing it in a movie or a TV show or a video game or whatever, and then it ends up being like, holy shit, this is really cool.
And that's going to be good timing for the anthology too, because Stranger Things is so popular. For people talking about that, like, oh, there's a book about Kate Bush.
Yeah, I don't know if it's. I'd have to ask Evan if that resulted in a boost in sales or anything, but I sure hope it would. I hope that would inspire people to people should really read that book. It's super cool, and they did a fantastic job.
The cover's cool.
Yeah, the cover is great. They did a fantastic job putting it together. It's again like just a stellar table of contents in there.
And I know you didn't publish it, but something like that, it's very niche and specific. Are you as a publisher ever worry about something being so specific, like it wouldn't reach a broader audience, like only Kate Bush fans would read it necessarily, and wouldn't reach more readers, something like that? Because you did what, Misfits?
Yeah,
Misfits. Yeah,
mm-hmm. Yeah, and that it's interesting when you do something like that, because that is a consideration for sure. But then you also like with the myth, and I don't know if this will pan out, like how this is done for Head's Dance with the Kate Bush one, but with the Misfits book, a bunch of people who wouldn't have bought a Weirdpunk book in general bought that because they're like rabid Misfits fans.
So it worked the other way around then.
Yeah, so it's like people who wouldn't normally read things in like in small press in general. We're like, oh, cool, I'm gonna buy this. So even if it might end up alienating your general horror readers because it's so specific, I think it can also, if you can tap into the audience of the thing you're paying tribute to, you can end up selling, at least some copies to them. And that's something that I've worried about to a minor degree with Stories of the Eye, where I'm like, this is like a very, I love it. I'm so excited that we're doing this book and that Joe came up with this idea. But it is something like, how do I sell this to people?
Yeah,
like, because it's stories about artists and models. It's like,
I still think you're going to get a different audience because of the name. I think that's going to that's going to play in your favor. I think, because
I hope so. Yeah, it's definitely a thing of like just figuring out like where the inside group on that one's going to be between horror fans and people who want to read about horror stories involving art. Which I'm sure there are many, but it's also finding them. Anything you put out, half the battle is finding the people who want to read it.
And I didn't even think about the opposite, like the Kate Bush fans would come read it. So I wasn't even thinking about it that way. So that's a good point.
Let me ask you, as we start to wind down some here, let me ask you this. Do you have anything, any story right now from someone that you're just sitting on, waiting to release and maybe introducing them to the world in a way? Like I knew about Eric LaRocca before his huge book you did. I didn't know Maria Abrams, but now she's blowing up. I kind of knew Ali C, but I kind of want to say the book that she did through Weirdpunk got her more notoriety. So it's almost like you're releasing some of these books for some of these writers that are blowing up. They're getting bigger things. So let us in on a secret. Do you have do you have something sitting there and you're just waiting for the right time?
Is Jay hinting at his own stuff?
Yeah. Did maybe someone like me send you anything that you're waiting to put out? No, it's interesting because I don't have anything on deck, but I do have some books in my like for consideration pile.
Yeah.
Like I said, like 10 or 12 in there. And a couple of them are like would be the person's first solo book.
Okay.
And I don't know if it'll pan out that way, but either that I'll publish it or it'll end up being their first work because they might have other work out there with other presses, even if I do pick it up. But I've invited like I guess I don't want to say too much about that because there's one specific book
I put you on a spot. I know, but
I simply haven't read yet. But it's from a writer who was in a weird punk anthology whose work I fell in love with. I invited her to write a novella that she's still working on, and she also was like, "Oh, I have this short story collection. Do you want to read it now that you're doing collections?" And I was like, "Fuck yes!" I just haven't gotten to it yet, but without having like signed the contract or accepted that I don't want to name names.
I got you.
But it is a thing where I've invited an okay amount of people over time who, and maybe it wouldn't be their first book, it'd be their second book, but like writers who I know and like and think could do something that I would want to publish. I've invited an okay amount of people to submit to me where I'm still like hoping, like, is that ever going to come through my inbox?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so how do you feel about like what I just said? Like, let's Eric LaRocca is huge now, you know, and you have the rights to saying, hey, I published, the book that blew up, right?
Yeah.
And Maria Abrams, she just released a novel with Clash.
Yep.
And it's got some steam, and so she's showing up.
Yeah,
you can say, hey, I released her debut novella. You could lay claim to kind of, getting their names out there. So that's
like discovering an artist, kind of.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying, you just discovered them because they did the writing, but you opened the door there, and now these are some of the names. Joe Cornell, it's because now we know about her, and I read the Mud Ballot, and then it's great. So I'm looking forward to other stuff. So you know what I mean. So you have to kind of punch.
He's trying to get you to pat yourself on the back.
Come on, do that.
I would like.
You got to pump your chest a little bit and say yes. These are my people.
I feel really good about collaborating with and helping give the opportunities to have those books come out into the world.
Look at that PC answer.
I don't want to take credit for any of it.
No, I know what you're saying. I know.
Like these, it's one of those things where I think I honestly have a hard time, even in terms of marketing the books, by relying on prior books to market them.
Yeah.
Like in the wake of the success of Things Have Gotten Worse, I'm like, do I now, every time I put out a book in like press releases or whatever, be like, from the publishers of the acclaimed Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca, the original version, like, or whatever. Like, I think I just have a hard time with that, where like I want the work to stand on its own, like each piece to be the thing, and not
then you become like movie producers, like from the producers of
right.
Big Bang Theory. Here comes young Sheldon, which is something like that. So
I never want to do that. I feel like if I go down this road long enough, if I go from the publisher of blah blah blah, next thing you know, I'm going to be publishing a whole young Sheldon book, and the world is going to be so much worse because of what I've brought to it.
It's like 15 years later, you're still talking about that one book you published 15 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Marketing is gross. It's weird to say that as a business owner, as somebody who's part of my job as publisher, right, is to get the work out there, is to get the books in front of people, is to get some reviewers to read it, to get people to galvanize around it if they think it's good and help bolster it. And the actual like marketing aspect of that is the most soulless, awful thing. And I try my best to never do it in any kind of like sleazy or like I'm not.
It's like you got your trench coat on, like, hey kids, look at my books.
Like I love is it like William Castle, like the Tingler, like you're gonna be shocked, or like bring your fucking vomit bag to the screening, like those old kind of sleazy producers. I respect that, but I could never do that.
I can just picture you like you're 80, you're in a nursing home, and you're like, I remember when I released this one, put me on the map, and people are like, what? Did you take your pills today?
Yeah.
I did want to ask to wrap up. Like, I know last time we talked, this one was out, but it hadn't been out for very long.
Yeah.
How did the success of this one change Weirdpunk at all? Like, do you feel like this one being so popular helped get other books from Weirdpunk seen more or anything like that? Or
not on the level that I hoped it would, to be honest. I really thought with the success of that, because I'm that person, right? If I read a book that I really like from a small press, I go, well, this is cool. What other books did they put out?
Right.
Yeah.
If when I came out of punk, like I grew up in the fucking 80s and 90s before internet, where you're like scanning liner notes to what bands do they think? I'll buy that.
Who they think you bought those?
Yeah. So like, what label put this out? I'll look for that label's other records. So like, that's me, and most people don't do that. And so I really hope that with that book being in so many hands, people who liked it would be like, well, fuck, what else did this what else did this publisher put out? And I think there was some of that, but not any super sizable amount, not in any super noticeable amount. It definitely changed how I do things, in that it sold so many copies that for the next roughly year, I don't have to have a job. I'm just living off of.
Hey, can't complain about that.
Yeah, like between that and other stuff, like other, books, but that was the big one that made that possible. And it happened at the right time because I lost my job. And then when unemployment dried up, it was about when I started getting payments for that. So that like changed that aspect where this is all I do. But it was also really stressful because I went from having, a handful of orders a week in the store, like, I don't know.
I know you were sold out all the time. You're like, put more in the shop soon.
Yeah.
Put more in the shop soon.
Yeah, it was like I used to be like a normal week. I'd be selling, a normal trip to the post office would be like 5 to 10 packages, and I'd go a couple times a week. And after that book came out, it was like I was going to the post office with 50 or 100 packages. I would buy more, and I started buying more than I usually buy. Once a book is out and I've done all the pre-orders and the sub clubs, moving forward, I buy a case at a time. And when it starts to get into like 10 or below or 15 or below, I'll buy a new case. So I constantly have them on hand. That when I was buying like 2 or 3 cases at a time and then adding them to the web store, even being like, I have ordered the copies. They're not here yet. You order this now, it'll be like an extra week before I ship it out.
Yeah, please be patient with me.
Yeah, exactly.
You were selling out the ones you didn't even receive yet.
By the time those like 2 or 3 cases would show up, I would have 12 left.
Yeah.
And I'd spend an entire day packing those orders. And then like, because I'm not a total monster, be like 3 or 4 the post office, because I do everything by, like Jay knows, I do everything by hand. I don't print labels. I go to the post office and they print the labels for me.
You got carpal tunnel from this book.
Yes, I do. I did. It was awful. I mean, I say awful, but it was also great, but it was stressful. But so then I'd be like, send everything out. And by the time everything's out, I'd be like, fuck, I forgot to order 2 more cases. And it would sell out. And it was just this insane
nonstop ball rolled down the hill.
Like, oh, we wanted to do something tonight. Sorry, honey, I have to pack 100 orders.
Yeah,
and just like have the TV on packing orders till 2 a.m. Yeah. So it was, and it's hard to complain about that success, but it also was stressful. It took a little bit of a toll. I think that's why it took me so long. It's taking me so long this year. Is I honestly feel like I'm still
had to catch your breath.
Yeah, like catching my breath from all that intensity. And then with like Eric got the Titan deal, and I don't have the rights to the book anymore. The Weirdpunk book, as everybody knows, is out of print. I still get emails. It says it's out of print. How can a print on demand book be out of print? It's out of print because it doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Tell them to go to eBay. I won't say who. One of our friends sold their copy on eBay for like $150 the other day.
Holy shit! Yeah. Yep. Yeah. There's. People still might be able to do that. I'm not sure, but because maybe now that people know the version's coming out in September, maybe not. But if you want the OG, but so that was really cool, but it was really stressful. And then Eric taking the, within their rights, and how I have the contract is the author can remove the rights at any time. I request a year, but I'm not going to hold them to it. And it's mostly for me, if like somebody's unhappy, I don't want to keep them held in a prison, that they're unhappy with. I always want I try to be a really author friendly press, but also that allows the big press comes knocking, they can take their work to them. And, and Eric and I have talked about this some, I sincerely wish that they hadn't taken it from Weirdpunk. And it's, it's hard to be, like not looking out for my own self-interest with that, right? Like obviously that book made money, and Weirdpunk to be my full-time job for a while. But it's also just, I thought we were doing something really fucking cool.
Right.
The two of us, like fucking Boston and Minneapolis, 2 people, and that is it. Put out a book that ran circles around your standard large press.
Because you don't ever see small press books do that numbers like at all. Not even close.
It sold like 30,000 copies in 5 months.
And not just that, it just had so many people talking about it too. And good, bad, whatever.
Yeah.
Any publicity is good publicity. I mean, that to me. So people were talking about it.
People were talking about it.
People want to know why other people are pissed off about it. So they're reading it, So
it's like the Books in the Freezer podcast TikTok. I'm sure it went up, but she had like 500,000 views on her TikTok talking about this book, which is insane.
My review of it on my channel, it's got close to 6,000 views. Just for that, and the next closest one is like 500 views.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, that's even the sales level, right? Like that was like 30,000. The other, like, I mean, I think a couple of the other Weirdpunk books have cracked 1,000. Like it's the disparate nature, and those are like potentially been out for years.
So let me ask you this. We're going to wrap it up here soon, but along the same lines, that you said you had hoped that with the success of that one, more people would be like, hey, I want to check out these other things. And that didn't really happen. But are you starting to get more interest in people wanting to release their stuff through you now because of that?
Yeah, that is definitely a thing. Like a wider audience of writers especially is aware. And I think that there are some people who think that like, because that happened, if I put out their thing, that means it'll happen again. And several books that came out after that didn't do that. So like, this wasn't me. This was a combination of forces, that like we were able to finagle this happening. And
what do you think it was about that blew up the way it did? Like, not that it's a bad book. Like I enjoyed it, but not that I've enjoyed the other Weird Press books and they didn't do the same numbers.
Yeah, I think, a lot of it had to do with obviously Eric's career was kind of on this rise. The book is really well written, and the synopsis I think pulled people in. There's a lot of nostalgia right now for the early thousands, so I think that got some readers in the door, just that alone. The fucking title is great, and obviously that cover art.
Yeah, the cover's good.
The number of reviews that I saw that was like, I bought this book because of the cover art. The cover art and the title, or the cover art, the title, and the description, like that sold the book more than anything. And then it just got in front of the right people at the right time. And those people with bigger audiences told their audiences, and those people told their audiences. And like somebody tweeted it, and it had like over 100,000 likes on the tweet, just about, it was the cover, and it said, I don't know who it was, I don't remember, but somebody tweeted it who had a massive following. It just was the cover and said, I know nothing about this book, but based on the cover art and the title, I want to read it. And like we saw like that day an influx again of sales.
So you basically just captured lightning in a bottle. Everything was just perfect timing for that.
Everything came together in a weird way that like I couldn't replicate if I tried my damnedest. I would like to. I would like to replicate something, and I would like to have, more things. I don't need to do that, but like grow the press to make more things even approach anywhere near that. Obviously, is the whole thing is getting the books in people's hands. That's why I do this. I put out books that I love because I want other people to read them. That's like the only. When I was like 20, I wanted to start a press, but I had no idea how to do it. And that was 19 fucking years ago. And here I am finally doing it. And the whole thing is just like, there's really cool stuff out there that people aren't getting published. There's really cool stuff out there that it just isn't getting seen. Like, how can we make this stuff get into the world and get it in front of people?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're going to start wrapping it up here because I know you look tired. I'm exhausted. It's been a rough week. You know, a couple days without power, but
he's been on that con trail. He's been going Stoker Con and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Did you go to? Did you go to Ghoulish or no?
So I didn't go to Ghoulish. Okay. I had signed up to table Ghoulish, and then I had to pull out last minute just because some stuff came up.
I know you've been at a bunch of cons recently, so I didn't know which ones you've been to.
Yeah, I was planning on doing that, and then unfortunately couldn't. And then I was planning on doing Killer Con, and unfortunately cannot do that now either. So both the Texas con, and it was, part of it is just like the price of airline, like tickets,
it's probably gone up,
skyrocketed. And after I drove to Williamsburg and back alone. I did that. I did Author Con alone, and then my girlfriend came with me to Denver. That was also like not quite as big of a drive, but also a really big drive and back. And I was like, various reasons, including money and the fact
exhausting.
I was like, I can't do another 3-day drive right now.
But
I am wrapping it up. One more thing that's happening this year is me and a group of writer friends, who I will tell you who in 1 second, are doing a mini writer tour, reading tour. Like a DIY punk rock horror reading tour. So
everyone's getting in the van and you're going.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I want to know.
But we're a bunch of writers. So this will be Labor Day weekend. So like the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, with Labor Day being the Monday. Yeah. And we're Thursday we're going to be in Pittsburgh. We haven't nailed down a location yet. Friday, we're going to be at Conquest Books in Ashland, North Carolina, which is where one of the guys is from, and he runs the bookstore. Saturday, we're going to be in Columbus. We're still trying to nail down a venue for that.
My Columbus?
We're going to be in Columbus. Yeah.
You got to let me know. I'm
man. It'll be awesome. And then Sunday, we'll be in Chicago, and we just nailed it down that we're Bucket of Blood, the horror bookstore in Chicago, was gracious enough to be super into it. So we're going to read there. And it's me, obviously, and Edwin Callahan, who runs Gravely Unusual magazine. He also, he's the one that owns Conquest Books in Ashland. Evan Shelton, who does the Lurking Transmission podcast. And the two of them collectively run Castaigne Publishing. Matthew Mitchell, who does the Horrorium comic. Justin Lutz, he's up for a Splatterpunk Award for his story in Teenage Grave. And then Michael Tichy, who's also a horror writer who's around and in a bunch of anthologies and stuff. So the 5 of us are piling into a fucking van with suitcases mostly full of books and a few clothes.
Now, I'm sure the van in 2022 is a lot more luxurious than the van in the 70s, the punk rock bands who drove in.
Definitely more luxurious than a van in the 70s, but I think the van we're driving is a 2001.
Okay, we're getting close then.
We're going to be putting some road miles on that, so hopefully it doesn't break down.
The windows
no shag carpet in that one. No lightning bolt unicorn painted on the side.
We should do that. We should make a stop to get that.
Oh, you really should.
Get an airbrush.
You should get like a. Oh, there you go.
Like it has to be all you on. Your shirts are off and you're jacked. You're like riding unicorns.
Yes. Oh my god, like a Manowar album cover.
Yeah. There you go.
Nice.
And then you can auction the van off at the end.
Yeah. Take this van that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. It's got so many small issues. It's not even funny.
We'll pass inspection.
Exactly.
That sounds awesome. So, Jay, you'll get to meet some writers because you always complain that nothing ever happens close to you.
Well, they do. It's just, okay. Yeah, you got to let me know about that. So,
yeah. Once we nail down a day, we've got a few venues we've reached out to. We have the date. We're just trying to nail down a spot to do it. And It's one
Jay's
of those
backyard.
Yeah. It's one of those weird things where I don't know, like, is anyone gonna come to any of these? Like,
you got one in Columbus.
Yeah, we have one in Columbus. I have friends in Chicago, so I have a feeling that we'll have at least some, like, all of us know at least a few people in Chicago, and I have, like, I don't know, an okay amount of friends there. So we'll at least some of them, unless they're out of town or busy, will hopefully show up. But yeah, it'll be really interesting. I've never, like, who does this? But we're just like, fuck it. Like, this is like a group of people who I've become friends with just like on Twitter and stuff. And I've Castaigne, like Gravely Unusual, and Edwin and Evan put out the In the Shadow of the Horns black metal anthology that I had a story in. And I was in issue 5 of Gravely Unusual last year, 2 years ago. Like, we've just kind of become friends from like being in stuff together and doing stuff together. And we all went to AuthorCon and basically spent the entire weekend hanging out with each other. And then have just, like, we were doing a writer thing right now where we meet typically every week and we talk about what we're working on and hang out and just talk shop. And it's been really cool. And we're like, fuck it, what if we went on a weird tour?
That sounds cool. It sounds organic. It just happened because y'all are buddies and stuff.
And you're sticking to your name, Weirdpunk Books.
Yes.
That's, again, that's weird to do that in 2022. So who's doing that besides Weirdpunk Books? So.
Yeah, exactly. Just gonna be reckless.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good time, man.
Yeah, hopefully. I'll have more details as we get these developed. We're gonna make flyers and whatnot, but yeah.
Oh, you got to get the old fashioned flyers to put up on telephone poles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the pink copies and the red copies and yellow copies, they're all the same, and just staple them up.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
We could do this. It's like a ground roots campaign here to get it all out. So
yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap it up here. We're gonna let everybody get to sleep and do what we got to do. This was fun.
This was super fun. Thanks for letting me go way over time.
Oh,
no, we don't have time limit.
Yeah, trust me, we don't. But Sam Richard, everyone, Weirdpunk Books. I think we've said it all tonight. I mean, Brad will have the look, I'm lost for words. The web address down below, you know.
Yeah, all the Weirdpunk stuff's down in the, go to the website.
Of course, you can catch him on Instagram and Twitter as usual. You know, he's always hanging out, and that's it. I don't know what else. I think we covered everything in the show. Really All right, that's the end of it. That's another exciting episode of Paper Cuts. As always, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate everyone stopping by. Until we meet again, for Sam Richard, that's Brad over there. Over there.
Which way?
We're done, guys.
Cheers.
Have a good night,
man.
Thank you.
Love you, Jay.